Welcome to the Body Ethos Podcast, where we're shifting the culture from sickness to health. Before we dive in, please remember that this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Body Ethos Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Whitmill, and on this podcast, we're all about shifting the culture from sickness to health. Today, we're going to be digging into a hot topic, which is breaking up with Botox and why it's more toxic than you think and how to achieve youthful, glowing skin more naturally. Today, our guest is Vanna. I am so excited to have her. She is a nurse practitioner that specializes in non-toxic, whole body approach to skin care and women's health challenges. She's passionate about helping people move away from more conventional toxic skincare and educating them on the risks of these more conventional methods to make the best decision for themselves, as well as embrace natural alternatives to true skin vitality from the inside out. So let's go ahead and dive in. Vanna, I am so glad that you're here. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to a more holistic approach as a nurse practitioner and in the field of dermatology.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Jess. We have been friends through MBCE for, I think, over a year now. So it's fun to get to sit down and talk with you. But a little bit about me is I have been in conventional medicine for over 10 years. And I started out in the neonatal ICU, transitioned into dermatology, and I've been in the field of dermatology for the majority of that time. And I think just like most other people that are kind of looking for more and starting to raise red flags of like, hey, something's off here. We're not getting to the root cause of illness. We're not answering the question of why this is happening. And I was searching for more, and I knew there had to be more out there. And I would have patients, I talk a lot about acne. It's really my specialty within functional medicine as well. I would have patients on the spironolactone, on the Accutane, on the topical prescriptions, and they still weren't getting better. But then alternatively, same thing for autoimmune conditions like psoriasis or, a random one like granuloma annulare. People weren't getting better, but I was doing everything that I was taught to do. So that just sparked this question in me of, okay, what's going on here? And then I say it's always divine intervention because I don't exactly remember what happened, but I found Emily Morrow, I took MBCE, and I learned how to interpret lab work at a functional level, an optimal level, and then figure out what are these root causes? Why are we having these PMS symptoms? Why are we having these acne breakouts? And then addressing them. And I was seeing results without prescriptions, which is absolutely huge. And I've really never gone back.
I love that so much. I know once you learn to look at the body through that functional root cause perspective, you can't go back, right? Because you're missing the mark if you're just band-aiding it with prescriptions or maybe, diet or things like that. Like we're really not addressing the root cause. So I love that you took MBCE like I did, and it's just been life-changing for yourself and clients. I'd love for you to talk about, just being a nurse practitioner, but transitioning to functional medicine. How has that been for you? And what are some challenges that you faced?
Challenges are just it, because I still practice in functional or conventional medicine, but I do a lot within functional. And I try to always see the beauty and the blessing in things of, even though it's not exactly where I feel like I'm meant to be, I am there for a reason. And something really beautiful is still treating people in conventional medicine. I'm able to speak with them about a more functional approach that they otherwise would have probably never been exposed to. And it's so interesting because I would say 85% of the people that are like, I've tried X, Y, and Z, I'm still not getting better, like what's happening? I will say, have you ever considered a functional approach? And almost always their answer is no, what even is that? So there's huge blessing in being able to pivot and turn people to more of a functional and holistic approach. And there's also challenges because, again, even in conventional practice, I try to speak to people about their diet, speak to people about their lifestyle. Some people are accepting of that, and then some people aren't. I still have people that say, "Can you just give me a pill?" And I'm like, no, like this is not the mindset that we need to have. But I'm also really hopeful because when I do have that functional conversation with people, they are very open-minded. And I'm so hopeful because I think a lot of our culture and society is going that way as well. It's being more talked about on podcasts. It's being more widely accepted and used as a different modality of treatment. And it's really exciting.
It is. I agree. I think there is a movement where people are seeking out alternatives because unfortunately the system has failed them, right? And so I think you're right. I think a lot of people like yourself are asking more questions. I know I did, during my own health journey, there's got to be more than just a lifelong medication type of thing. So, but I love that even though people may not be receptive, you're planting those seeds right now. So you're spreading the good news, right? You're doing some good work in those spaces. And I think you, even though you said there's challenges, you are still providing more hope than maybe some other practitioners can provide because the knowledge and skills you have. And I think that's so beautiful, right? Like whoever comes into your office is so lucky to have you. So
Thank you.
Definitely.
Well, and a lot of people, just yesterday, I saw someone and they had recurrent eczema on their hands and they were like, could my blood sugar be affecting this? And I said, absolutely. It's your blood sugar is an inflammatory response. And it was just so shocking to me that she asked that. And I was like, oh yes, like let's lean into this. And I started to talk to her about functional medicine. And I'll say, because I can't, necessarily practice totally functional within, my conventional position, I will point her or, whoever to the MBCE referral list. And we were in there talking about it. And she was like, thank you so much. This is exactly what I was looking for. My other provider was trying to put me on metformin. I didn't want to do that. Like, this is such an answered prayer. And I was like, there you go. That's why I'm here.
Absolutely. 100%. Such a good example. And for those of you who don't know, by the way, what MBC is, it's Mastering Blood Chem with Emily Morrow. It's a course that a lot of people in the functional space have taken. Obviously, there's a lot of other really great courses, but we love this course because it's just so comprehensive. And as a practitioner, it's if you work with one of those practitioners, you're getting somebody who is trained from a root cause perspective. So look at your labs and really identify where are those red flags and where you need to go next on your healing journey. So it's a great place to start. I'm glad you refer people to that. That's awesome. Well, I'd love to dive into breaking up with Botox if you're ready for this.
Ready.
I think this is such a great topic. Botox is such a normalized part, I feel like, of the beauty industry, of just kind of our society anymore. I know personally, I feel like every day there's like a new med spa poking up somewhere here in Colorado. And so I know that women are seeking this. There's a high demand for it. But I don't think a lot of people realize the potential risk of these more conventional chemical toxic treatment. So I was wondering if you could break down what Botox actually does in the body and why it may not be as safe as it's marketed or assumed.
Sure. Disclaimer, I used to get Botox. I got it for 10 years. I injected it in patients in the field of dermatology. So if you're someone that's listening, although I don't think this audience is the audience that's getting Botox, which is totally fine, but you probably know someone that gets Botox and you can have this conversation with them. But I have not gotten Botox in, I think, a year and a half now. I feel so much better. And I think it's important to talk about I say there's 3 different effects that Botox can have. That is a systemic effect, like what is our toxic load? What's our toxic bucket? And then it's going to extrapolate to thyroid issue, hormone imbalance. There's also a localized effect because the way that Botox specifically works is it blocks a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. And when people say that Botox wears off every 3 to 4 months, it's technically not the case. I had someone on my podcast who is very well versed in this. Her name is Catherine Ermine. She is very educated on all of this, and she goes through. Her platform is basically Botox alternative, so I use a lot of her methods. But she explained it in this way, and I love the way she explained it, so I have to give her credit. Instead of Botox wearing off, it's really just your body healing itself and creating new pathways for those neurotransmitters to communicate. So every time you get those injections, your body has to heal itself. So there's a localized effect that's going on. What I experienced the most personally is decreased lymphatic drainage. So my eyelids actually got more droopy because I was not draining appropriately and I was getting super puffy right here. It's something that I constantly have to work on. I also had increased sinus issues because of that decreased lymphatic drainage. And again, something that I'm constantly having to work on and kicking myself for. And then lastly, where Botox can kind of affect us is really emotionally. So where I personally was, and I can look back, hindsight's 2020, I was totally finding my worth in that. So I needed to look a certain way. I needed to present myself in a way. I cared so much about what other people think. And quite honestly, I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm like, I don't care at all. But it took a lot of mental and emotional healing and digging for me to figure that out. So I think that's the main ways that Botox can affect us. But then you just have to think about what Botox actually is. It's labeled as a neurotoxin. It is a toxin. I'm not saying this to fearmonger. And what the industry will tell you is like, people will claim it's like botulism. It does come from that same bacteria, but they'll say it's such a small micro dose that it's not going to affect you in that way. Yet the black box warning on that, because it's technically a medication, and if there's any risk, there's going to be a black box warning. The black box warning is that it can migrate other than the places that it is injected and cause serious adverse effects like breathing difficulty, swallowing difficulty, double vision, urinary problems. So, and that's not being talked about but I will guarantee you, if you get Botox, you are signing your consent that you understand that on that waiver. And that's something that I don't think is talked about enough. But again, I think it's important to have this conversation. So if like you're someone that gets Botox or you're thinking about not getting it, no shame at all. We've all been there. It does have a good effect, but like at what cost? Like what fatal convenience is it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think the informed consent piece is missing in this conversation, right? Or even just the knowledge of like where it comes from. It does come from a neurotoxin that we are all afraid of, right? I mean, it's one of those bacteria that we know that we need to avoid because in large amounts, it can be fatal. And so, like you said, it's really important to realize what the risks are. And even though we're taking a small amount of poison, what's the cumulative effect over time and what's your current toxic bucket as it is? Because if you're somebody who is struggling with an autoimmune condition or, you're exposed to different environmental toxins like mold, or just in general, you're somebody who has a more toxic lifestyle, you're not avoiding, plastics and chemicals and glyphosate and all the things. I can't help but think, what is this truly doing to your body if your body has to go in and do double duty to heal yourself every time? And that's why it's wearing off, right? So it's, I think, a really important topic. As far as when people come to you now, what are some things that you tell them about the risks involved?
With Botox?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or like some of the like potential, even benefits. I mean, are there people who would benefit from it? Or do you think it's like actually, no, we all need to kind of stay away from this altogether.
I would say we all need to stay away from it altogether. I can understand and sympathize that it makes you feel better because you look better. But then I would challenge you, like, dive a little bit deeper on that. Like, are you finding your worth in how you are looking? I've been there, no judgment whatsoever. But I would really encourage, like, because I have friends that still get it like clockwork every 3 months. And my heart for them would be, what if you couldn't get it? Like, would you be okay? Like, I think there's a total difference in getting it because you enjoy it. You're not worried about the toxic effects. I would caution you to do that. But, and then like, oh, but if I couldn't get it, I would be totally fine. I think there's a difference in that than truly needing to get the injections. But like if someone were to come into me, I don't even inject Botox anymore. It's not something I offer in my practice. So when people are talking to me about it though, what I would warn them against again is exactly what you're saying, because we are having more well-known people that traditionally would get Botox. They had the mast cell activation. It did send them into an autoimmune flare. And when people have the reaction of, okay, was it truly the Botox? You have to think about it this way. And I talk to people about this all the time. They'll say, I started feeling terrible after X, Y, or Z, but it shouldn't have been that big of a deal. Just like you said, you have to figure out what is your toxic load. Like, did you have a bunch of microplastics? Were you exposed to mycotoxins? And then you started to have histamine flares. And then were those injections the one thing that just tipped off that toxic bucket, or was it cumulative over time? I mean, you're talking about a toxin that they considered using for warfare at one time for a paralytic. Like, you just have to think about it that way.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. And I think this is why this is such an important conversation. It's something like I was actually thinking before we got on the call, like I'm going to screen my clients to say, do you get any of these, treatments in your intake form? So I can have that conversation with them of, hey, if we're trying to get to the root cause, but then you're eliciting this healing response, this inflammatory response that can trigger more autoimmune symptoms, more histamine symptoms, then we need to have a conversation about where's the priority here, healing the body or, doing these conventional treatments that are just going to further exacerbate your symptoms in ways you aren't realizing, right? And so I think it's, I love that you are having these conversations with people and making sure they have that informed consent. And I think too, it's important to then bring an alternative, right? Because I think there are so many women are like, I don't know how to get this look that I want other than Botox, because that feels like the only option. That's the only known option that they have. And so I'd love to talk about some skincare approaches that you would suggest that are alternatives to Botox and what you've seen in your practice and on your own self that really gets you close to that look or achieves that look that people are looking for with Botox.
Yeah, sure. Before I do that, I just want to touch on, it's just coming to mind, so I feel like I need to say it. Some lab markers that you can look for to kind of trigger you to ask about if they're getting Botox. So, their platelets, if those are elevated, we know that's an inflammatory response. Ferritin elevated above 100 can be an inflammatory response. The platelets would be 350. Monocytes above an 8 can also be inflammatory. That can be a viral component, but I look at that for inflammation. And then also basophils. When basophils go to 2, that's kind of an indicator that we're in a histamine response. And then lastly, your typical inflammatory markers like CRP. I thought that might be helpful. If you're seeing those inflammatory patterns in blood work, it's important to ask, like, do they get Botox?
Absolutely. One, I think it's important for the client. Like if you're listening to this and you're getting Botox and you're seeing those exact numbers high on your labs, we know that you probably shouldn't be getting Botox because it's creating this inflammatory cascade in your body. And so you might be thinking it's from something else, but let's rule that out as a stressor for sure. And yeah, I'll definitely have that conversation with people as they come to me, because I do see most of those markers elevated, and obviously it's not just Botox that's elevating them. It can be that, chronic viral histamine reactions, mold toxicity, autoimmune reactions happening because of these underlying, hidden infections and things. But yeah, I love that you put that out there, because I think people can go into their labs right now and think, oh, this is really affecting me in a bigger way than I thought, because these markers are high and my body is really struggling to handle this. So thanks for adding that. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's so fun. And so personally, I've never gotten Botox. I'm all about like the more natural things, but, I am, as I'm looking at turning 34, knowing that perimenopause is coming and menopause, I personally am looking at more holistic ways to, reduce, my skin aging, right? And just preserving the youthful look that I've been, blessed with in my, 20s and 30s. I think everybody, as soon as they hit 30, they're like, okay, what can I do to preserve this? And obviously there's so many things like hydration and diet and things like that. But beyond those basic foundational things, what are some things that you feel like play the biggest role? Or is it things like foundational things like hydration and sleep and stress reduction and things like that?
Yeah, I think those are, just like you said, they're foundational. Like, they're non-negotiables. You definitely need to be doing those things. I noticed the biggest shift in my skin and not getting Botox, and the consistency of doing the sleep, the diet, the movement, that again, that's just like a baseline. But above that baseline, you do have skincare, but then you have other supports. So I'll go into a few of my favorite supports. I really like collagen. So BioCell collagen orally, and then there's also like the dropper forms. I do both of those to help, because we know elasticity of our skin plays a role for sure. And then other things that I do, I really love red light therapy. I have the Current Body red light mask, and a lot of people ask me about this. So I'm not saying like go out, run and splurge on a red light mask. I definitely think it's beneficial, but you need to, again, invest in the foundational things, a good skincare routine before you're buying all these like high tech gadgets and investing your money when you should. Like, the foundational things are going to move the needle way more for you, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. If you're not hydrating and sleeping well and eating well, then a red light mask is not going to help you. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I say that in everything else. Like, you can't, even supplements, like, you can't out supplement a bad diet. You can't out supplement stress. You can't out supplement X, Y, or Z. So again, those foundational and baseline things are super important.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as far as some things that you like to do, I know you've mentioned face taping, which is something I haven't tried, but I love gua sha and I love doing the facial cupping. But maybe if you don't mind, just kind of going into what those are real quick for the listeners.
Yeah. So I follow Catherine Remine for this, because if it weren't for her, I would have not a clue what I was doing. She has like a 60-page guide on cupping and taping. So basically what taping is doing is it's creating lymphatic drainage and supporting the structure of your skin. You do them for different amount of times, different areas of your face, depending on what areas you're wanting to target. So I mostly do taping on my forehead, because I have, again, lymphatic issues in my forehead from doing Botox for so many years that my eyelids droop. So what I'm doing is trying to release that tension of the muscle and increase lymphatic drainage by taping. I try to do that 2 to 3 times a week. I'm terrible with consistency, but I do notice the most improvement when I'm consistent with that. So I'll alternate between taping and cupping. And cupping is more, again, of a fascial. So it's kind of it's releasing the fascia, because what I think also over time, I've had so much tension here that I've needed to.
Oh yeah, so many of us are like this. Yeah, all day. Yeah,
and it gets so much worse with Botox, because you're actually overcompensating for it.
Okay.
Yeah. So doing the cupping as well, I have this, you probably can't see it, but well, and I work on it a lot, but like this line right here is the only one that I have at rest. And when I am consistent with the cupping and the taping, I notice that quite honestly disappears.
See, and that's so amazing. And I think provides so much hope, right? That you can get the look that you're looking for with your skincare routine, even, I mean, even 2 to 3 times a week with the taping and the cupping, right? I mean, you said as long as you're, consistent a few times a week, you're getting that look you want. And I think that that's amazing. I know personally, I find such a more, like my jaw is so much more like, what is it called? Just more defined when I do the gua sha and the cupping. My cheekbones come out like, I don't have as much puffiness underneath my eyes when I do those things. And it doesn't even have to be every day. And so I think that that's the other thing too. I think it can feel overwhelming. It's like I can go in for a Botox treatment. I look good for months, or I have to do this like 20-step care routine every day. And that's so overwhelming and so much time and so much more money, it feels like for some people. But in reality, it just takes a few minutes to kind of go through, and it feels so good. And like you said as well, this all has to do with that lymphatic drainage. So why is the body having a hard time moving that lymphatic drainage? And our lymphatic drainage is so important for our body to detox. And so we need to be moving that lymph manually as a practice to keep our body's ecosystem healthy anyways. And so we're getting this buildup in the face. And I think that that's a deeper conversation of like, okay, have I been drinking enough water? Was I getting enough sleep? Those weeks where I'm more puffy, am I having more histamine response going on? Was I not taking care of my gut as much as I could have, right? How was my stress? And so it's also, I think, a tempo of what's going on internally is it's reflecting in our face. And it's not just, aesthetics. It's a deeper conversation to have too, of like, how am I not caring for myself in the ways that I should be with those foundations as well? I feel like, at least that's the way I see it. It's like, okay, I'm more puffy. Okay. What have I been neglecting in foundations? And how do I need to support my body to thrive this week? So yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All of that, because really you think about, we all say this, that like our lymphatics are like our trash can, but if you're not doing lymphatic massage or supporting like that lymphatic drainage, it's like putting your trash out in your driveway, but it never getting taken out. And it just keeps accumulating over time. And like you said, you're going to see those effects in like the puffiness. The most puffy that my face ever got was when I drank alcohol. And I'm not saying that like I probably got to the point where I was just drinking alcohol like on occasions or on the weekend. Every time I would do that, I'm talking, it would look like my eyelids would look almost clear. They were so swollen. I was like, okay, my body hates this. I would also get a histamine response like hives. So I actually have not drank, I think in like 6 months now, which awesome. It feels amazing, but that just goes to show you like the body does not make mistakes. It's talking to you in so many ways, but are you listening?
Yeah, no, amen to that. The body is talking to you. Yeah. And what is it calling you to explore deeper? Like you said, is it maybe a habit that's not affecting you really well, like drinking? Or is it you're neglecting sleep, or you're neglecting self-care practices? Or are you, really stressed and you need to deal with an emotion in your life, right? Like a stressful relationship. I think, we all need to be listening. So I think that's a good takeaway from all this as well, is skincare is not just, what's on the surface. It's a lot of times underneath. And I'm with you. Alcohol is not my friend anymore too. Every time I try, it bites me in the butt. And so I think I'm going to be breaking up with alcohol as well, because it's just not worth it. But yeah, I'm glad that you have given it up for 6 months. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's hard. It's not
It
easy.
is.
There are times where like we went on spring break with my kids and I was like, we went to Gatlinburg, which is amazing. But we were like
Yeah,
walking around downtown. I was like, it's so weird that I like don't have a beer because everyone's walking around with drinks and stuff, or like the sun was setting and people had a cocktail. And I was like, it feels so weird because that was so ingrained in me. It's just like such a social thing. But then
totally.
again, I know how much better I feel. Or I was like, I have zero desire for that. But it's not the easiest thing to do. So if it's something that like I aspired to do this for so long and I just like for some reason didn't. So don't be hard on yourself if you're that person that's like, yeah, I still have alcohol every now and then.
Totally. And I think that there's like that fine line for you. I know after the last time I drank, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be doing this for a while. Uh, like, it's just not worth it. I kind of got caught up in that, oh, it's like so sunny outside. I'm going to
Hmm.
have a cider out on the
Yep.
deck. It was an awesome day here in Colorado. And like, I felt bad for 3 days and I was like, this is not worth it. So, and before then, I don't think I had drank for like 3 months. And so I was like giving it a little go again, not worth it. So, but you don't always know until you give it up to what a
Yeah.
difference it makes, right? Your sleep, your skin, your mental outlook, it all changes when you do give it up. But again, you have to take one baby step at a time. So, but yeah, I love that good message as well. I think I was going to ask too, so kind of going back to skincare. So we talked about taping, we talked about cupping, all these great alternatives. But if someone is looking to transition to a more holistic, natural skincare routine, it can feel really overwhelming, right? There's a lot of information. Sometimes it can seem really expensive. Where should they start, and what are some key things that they should look for or avoid?
Sure. So a lot of people will use like the term clean when it comes to skincare. And I think that's quite honestly like a greenwashing term because you can say clean and my clean is different from your clean. So I always tell people to start off first by defining what your clean is. Like personally for
Mm-hmm.
me, I don't want any carcinogens or endocrine disruptors in things that I'm putting on my body or like that I have within my home. But for someone that maybe has a history of eczema or asthma that is more flared by irritative things, you might want to avoid more irritants. And how you can decipher if different products have these components within them. You can use a platform like Yuka. I don't love Yuka because there are some products on there that I personally like, but Yuka gives them like a 0 rating. And then I went through and like manually looked at what they were saying was bad, and those things weren't even in there. So, like, take these apps with a grain of salt, kind of do your own research. The one that I personally use the most is something called EWG, and they break down the categories of it. Does it have carcinogens? Does it have endocrine disruptors? Does it have allergens in it? So I personally use that. So defining what your clean is and then going from there. But like your skincare should be so easy. It does not have to be expensive. It does not have to be complicated. Quite honestly, one of my favorite skincare lines you can get in a drugstore and on Amazon, it's called Vanna Cream. It has no parabens, phthalates, dyes, anything like that in it. It's a more clean option, and it has no pore cloggers in it. So if you're more acne prone, you also have to add in that layer of pore clogging ingredients. If you're not, you don't necessarily have to. But I will say that pore clogging ingredients can also be kind of inflammatory. So if you have pigment issues or larger pores or the appearance of larger pores anyways, pore clogging ingredients can be affecting that. So I think that I personally am only really acne prone on my back, but I still check all of my makeup and skincare for pore clogging ingredients because of the inflammatory effect. So, I mean, it can be, like I said, easy as 3 steps. Wash your face, put on an active ingredient, and we can go into that if you'd like to, like when to choose what actives. and then put on a moisturizer. I do prefer SPF just as an anti-aging moisturizer in the morning. I know people like roll their eyes at that, like a derma saying to wear SPF. And I do think it's important to get sun on your skin without SPF blocking it for certain times, because I do think that vitamin D is important. But I do the SPF on my face as like an anti-aging step.
Totally. And for me, like that anti-pore clogging is so important because of the appearance of my pores. I'm not acne prone. So you would think like, oh, you don't need that. But I noticed a difference when I changed to anti-pore clogging products, that the appearance of my pores were smaller, which obviously is a desired look that I was looking for, right? And I was always frustrated, like, why do my pores look so big? Why are they clogged? And that made a huge difference for me. And, it just, I don't know, it was a game changer. So if you're thinking like, okay, I don't have acne, I need to just go with that, I personally would say give it a try, because it can really make a big difference. And I agree with you. To be honest, I'm an anti sunblock girly. Like I don't do sunblock. I've been to Mexico. I don't wear sunblock. I'm super pale, as you can tell, but I will get a tan if I do not put on sunblock, but I put sunblock on my face, because I do think that the damage that it could do to my face, and just how much, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the skin on your face is so much more delicate than the skin on my arm and my leg. And so I like to protect that as much as I can. And just one application in the morning, and then wearing a hat when I'm in the sun. But I try to get the sun on the rest of my body. And so if you're somebody who, is not, a sunblock person like I am, I still think that that's important, especially when I'm at, in like some place like Mexico or Florida. Even here in Colorado, the sun can be really intense. So I tend to agree with you on that. Like, even though it seems cliche, right, to put sunblock on your face, I think it's really important. So I wanted to point that out. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, cool. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about acne, just kind of going back to that. This isn't something that I've personally dealt with. I don't know if this is something that you've dealt with, but I know we both see a lot of clients that deal with acne. And of course, it's not just topicals, right? They come to us saying like, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried that. Even like eliminating dairy and gluten, and it's not working. And it's normally because there's these deeper root causes. There's these deeper imbalances happening in the body. And I was wondering, from your perspective, what are some of those top things that you see that are contributing to acne in clients?
So acne, just like you said, it is a symptom and there is a root cause. The most common patterns that I see, there's probably, I would say, three main ones. So like stress and blood sugar that go hand in hand. Main markers I love to look at for this are your glucose, your insulin, fasting insulin, and hemoglobin A1C. And then infections. This is like the most common thing that we see is underlying infections, which you're going to see in your complete blood count. You can do a GI map to see like more specifically what infections we might be dealing with, as far as bacterial, fungal, is there H. pylori involved. But simply on that CBC, looking at those neutrophils, lymphocytes, eosinophils, and seeing, are we working with parasites? Are we working with bacteria, fungus, viral? And I also will see that infections are driving that blood sugar. So many times I have clients that come in with an elevated fasting insulin and elevated hemoglobin A1C, and they're like, my diet is clean. I move. I'm doing all the right foundational things. Like, why is my blood sugar markers elevated? And it's usually secondary to those infections and those toxins. And then additionally, I mean, you could have like a zinc deficiency. You can have a choline deficiency that we see like on your lipid panel. And then drainage. I mean, we all know drainage is a component. Like, are we needing to support the liver? Are we needed to support the kidneys? Do we have like a backup of that? And then lastly is hormones. But we all know hormones are not the root cause. They're just the messenger. So like, what's driving those hormones to be off? Most commonly, we'll see testosterone be high or our estrogen be high.
Absolutely. And like you said, they're it's more of a downstream effect when we see those hormones high. There's always a toxin, a pathogen, some sort of imbalance that's driving that. But it is important to know, right? Because I think it can help you understand where those downstream effects are happening. When we see estrogen dominance high, I a lot of times think mold, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's mold involved.
Yep.
And also thyroid things. So then we think, okay, are there heavy metals? So, of those types of things. But I think it's hard from a client perspective to be dismissed with the hormone conversation because it's what they're feeling. I'm feeling like I'm having PMS. I'm feeling this acne. I'm feeling these changes in my body, and it's with my cycle. So I feel like it's a hormone issue, but there is normally a deeper root cause driving that, like you said, of a fungal infection or a gut infection or some sort of toxin pathogen going on. And so when you see that in your practice, I know for me, I see a reduction in those acne symptoms, in those skin symptoms, hives, eczema, those types of things. What is the number one thing that you see with acne? Is it fungal, parasites, or is it just kind of a hodgepodge of things?
It's a hodgepodge, but again, you can tell on the CBC because like if those neutrophils are high, I'm thinking more like bacterial, fungal, but also if there's a heavy metal component too, like our kidneys burdened, then I think more, okay, fungal, because we know that metals, estrogen and fungus love to live in this environment together. But then like if your eosinophils are elevated, like there's probably parasites at play. But then, lymphocytes, if those are more elevated with our monocytes, that's likely viral. I mean, it's really just a case by case basis.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that that's another good reason to like not assume that what the root cause of your acne is because, you saw somebody post like, oh, mine was candida, mine was estrogen dominance. It can be different for you. And that's why I think getting your labs looked at from a functional perspective, regardless, even if you have acne or even have health problems, is to have that insight to what is really going on. I think it's so powerful. I think everyone needs to get it done at least every 6 months to a year just to keep up with what's going on in the body so we can catch things before they do get out of control. But if you are having a symptom like acne or eczema or hives or whatever that is, I think it's so powerful. Even rosacea, right? That's something I've struggled with in my histamine journey this past year is rosacea. Something I really never struggled with, but knowing that, I had a gut infection, I had to go on an antibiotic, the whole cascade, and rosacea popped up. So frustrating. But the more that I've addressed those underlying imbalances, the more I've seen it go away. And I'm sure you see that in your practice all the time as well.
Yeah. And I think it's important to talk about because it's like, again, people are seeking answers to these things. And the best that they know is to go to a derm. And unfortunately, the way that I was trained, we take nothing into consideration as far as lifestyle goes, underlying causes, root causes. So, I mean, it's the most helpful. Like, build your team. Sure, you could have a derm that is so helpful topically, but then you have, like, I have so many clients that I work with functionally, and they have a derm in their area too, and we work together. And I think that's what the model should look like, right? There's a time and there's a place, but I think that we're getting to a point that both modalities can be utilized and utilized effectively.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I do agree. We need a team. We need community. We need a team. I think and especially when you're going through a healing journey, you need that supportive community of practitioners and friends and family that are on your side, so you can make the best decision possible. So yeah, I agree. And I do think I do see the model going into that way. And it's my hope for the future that we can have those honest conversations among other practitioners and allied health professionals of, hey, I'm working on my client's gut health, but I know too, in this moment, they need support with some topicals, and having that conversation and how can we blend kind of the best of both worlds together. And so I love that you're acting as that bridge right now too, in the work you're doing. It's amazing. Awesome. And then I wanted to just talk about one more thing. I know that this is something you love to bring up in your podcast and your work, and something that I think is really, really important. And it's just, where does true beauty come from, right? Because I think a lot of us are seeking to be seen and to feel beautiful. And there's this pressure in this culture as women to hold onto our youth and to perfection. And I think that's why we're driven to do things like Botox and some extreme beauty treatments, or even treat our body poorly, right? By not nourishing it properly, over exercising, working too hard, trying to, achieve this level of perfection because of the age we live in. Everything's perfect on Instagram and social media, right? So how can we shift our mindset from your perspective to see beauty through the lens of our identity and God, and rather than the world standards?
Sure. And I was there. I am a believer, and I am who the Lord says that I am. But I've always struggled with that. So when I was not close to the Lord in my walk with Jesus, I was always looking for validation from outside sources. I was always trying to fill this hole. I call it the God socket that nothing will ever fit in. So I was getting the Botox, I was getting the fillers, I was doing all the procedures and the skincare, and I would watch YouTube makeup videos for like hours and not even like put the makeup on. Like, it was just this escape. But I came to a point where I realized that I was finding my worth, like I've mentioned before, and what the world saw of me. And it's so funny because, you mentioned my podcast. Even my podcast, that started as a time where I wanted to just be seen and I wanted to be heard. And like, we're going through a name change right now because that it just doesn't serve me anymore. Like, I don't feel that mom guilt anymore because, again, I look for my truth and what the word of God says, because this culture and this world, it is so quick to tell you lies and to deceive you that you are not enough. And it is always something that I've struggled with. But in rearranging my thoughts of, I'm going to take care of my body because I'm a steward of what the Lord gave me. I'm going to take care of my finances because I'm being a good steward. I'm going to be a parent because these children were given to me. It's like every single perspective that I've had has shifted into the identity that the Lord has given me, because we are made in God's image, versus me becoming my own God. Because that's exactly what I was doing. I was so a part of like this whole new age. How can I help myself? How can I hustle my way to the top? You name it, I was doing it. And I was so tired and so burnt out until the Lord called me back. I ran back to him. And if you've experienced this before, there's just like a piece that's just, you can't even understand, you can't even describe it until you've experienced it for yourself. So it's like someone listening that maybe they're not a believer. It's like what I'm saying makes zero sense until you experience it for yourself. But that's truly where I find my identity. It's with the Lord these days.
I love that. Yeah. It's this weight that I feel like so many of us carry unnecessarily, right? When our burden should be light, right? And we don't have to worry about tomorrow, but we're taking that on when it's not our responsibility. God says, I've already taken care of it. And it's something that I have to remind myself all the time, right? Especially in doing this work, it can be a load, right? Of carrying people's health journeys, of owning your own business, of taking an alternative approach. And when you step back and you say, like, that's not my responsibility. I'm just called and I need to be present in this moment, be present in my business, be present with my, your family, your children, like you said, and be who you are, authentically you. And I love that your podcast used to be the mom guilt, but you've laid that burden down and it's now changing into this new identity of who you are. I love that.
Yeah. And it's exactly what you said. We're called to rest. So if you feel like you're in a season of unrest, of worry, anxiety, and just like you said, like, lay your burden down. And I would just encourage you to kind of take a step back, because I was there. I was so burnt out. And I actually, once I took a second to step back, all I could hear was the Lord saying, I just want you to rest. Like, this is not what I want for you. This is what the world wants for you, but that's not
Mhm.
what I want for you. And another thing is like, you'll see like on my Instagram at the very top, it says, yet not I, but through Christ in me. Because when people say, oh, like you healed my acne or you did this or you did that, it's not me. It is not me. I am just doing what I feel like you said the Lord has called me to do in helping people in that direction, but it's not me. Like a perfect example I like to use is also, I used to have trouble getting up in the mornings. I am not a morning person. And when I finally was like, you know what, Lord, I clearly can't get myself up. Can you please get me up in the mornings? I kid you not, every morning I get up and it is yet not I, but through Christ in me.
I love that. Oh, I love that. Yeah. And it's those simple things, right? Of where our struggles are feeling heavy. And if we surrender in that, then they're light. It's miraculous. And I love that. You're, this work that you're doing is just an extension of the bigger mission of, that love and peace that we can find in God and that connection, and honoring his creation through helping the body heal in the way that it's meant to heal. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you so much for that. That was so good. I want to ask you one final question. Okay. So, this podcast is all about shifting the culture from sickness to health. What is one practical or impactful way somebody who's listening today can start making that shift in their life? This topic is really big. For women, it brings up a lot of those insecurities, like you said. How am I going to be perceived? It can be overwhelming and feel really expensive as well. So what is one way that you would charge somebody with this topic today?
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot, because people that are first getting into all of this, they're like, how do I get from A to B? Let me just say, this whole process took me probably 2 years. Like, do not be discouraged. And like, I did one thing at a time. So that's my charge to you. Just come up with a list of things. Don't let it overwhelm you, and just take one. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You just take one thing. It's like the first thing I did in our home to create a non-toxic like home environment was I switched our laundry detergent. And then I switched our cleaning items. And then again, one thing at a time. And then before you know it, in the next couple of weeks or months, like you won't even recognize yourself, your home, your environment. And also just know that like surround yourself with positive and uplifting people, because there are a lot of people out there that are going to say this stuff is toxic. It's fear mongering, X, Y, or Z. But like, you can't deny the improvements that we see with making these small little changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen to that. And like you said, release that pressure of perfection.
Yes.
And just whenever, okay, you're done with your foundation, it's out. Let's think about switching it to something more non-toxic. You need new laundry detergent. Let's thinking about, okay, what's an alternative? And just those small shifts can make like you said, in 2 years, your household is completely different. You're completely different. Mm-hmm. Your kids and your family are completely different. So I love that message. So, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Vanna, for joining me today on this episode of the Body Ethos Podcast. I really appreciate you and all you're doing in the community and with this conversation. I do hope that today's conversation with Vanna was eye-opening to some of the hidden truths behind Botox, the power of holistic healthcare and skincare, and how true beauty comes within, both physically and spiritually. If this episode resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Please subscribe, leave a comment, share it with others, especially those who are maybe looking for alternatives to more natural, empowering approaches to beauty and health. For more resources, updates, and ways to connect with me or Vanna and some of the things that she mentioned, episodes and resources, I'll be linking those in the show notes. But remember, true radiance isn't something that we can inject or apply. It really is cultivated through alignment with God and our purpose and nourishing our mind and body. So until next time, I hope everybody stays empowered and continues to shift this culture from sickness to health together. Have a great day.